Welcome to Transformative Principal, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Welcome to Transformative Principal. This month is National Literacy Month, and we are so excited to be partnering with RIF.org to talk about literacy all month long. And this week we have on Tanya Sheckley and Brittany Botta from Up Academy in San Francisco, which is a elementary lab school that focuses on innovation, empathy, and strength. I'm really excited about this conversation. There's a lot of good stuff happening. Tanya is the founder and president, and Brittany is the director of teaching and learning at that school. And they created this RebelProject Literacy Curriculum that integrates the science of reading, social emotional learning, project-based learning, and literacy all in one thing. It's beautiful. I'm excited to share what that's all about. And I should also add that Tanya is the host of the Rebel Educator podcast, which you can find also on the B Podcast Network. So check that out, Rebel Educator podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tanya, welcome to Transformative Principal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Jethro. We're excited to be here and talk about the curriculum.
Yeah, so tell me what you think our main takeaway from this conversation is.
I think the takeaway is something that's new and exciting that really solves a need from a teacher's perspective in education. Brittany has been in the classroom for over 10 years, and this curriculum was born out of a need from not only our school, the other public and private and charter schools that she's taught at over the years. And so it was developed by a teacher for teachers to be easy to use, modular, create time in your day, and allow tons of space for creativity and creating student experiences.
Yeah, very good. We're going to get to all of that, and it's going to be excellent. Brittany, what's your takeaway from our conversation today?
My takeaway is that this curriculum really empowers teachers, and for kids, it helps learning to feel magical. And that's our biggest goal at Up Academy. And I think that is the biggest goal of teachers all over the world.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, the takeaway is hearing the stories of what kids are doing as young as kindergarten and in being able to learn these advanced skills that some adults don't even have. And we're going to get to a great story about that. So we'll get to my interview with Tanya and Brittany here in just a moment on Transformative Principal. All right. So Tanya, will you tell us about what Up Academy is and why it exists and what you're trying to do there?
Absolutely. So Up Academy is a progressive elementary school. We're based in the Bay Area. We have a focus on experiential education and project-based learning in small mixed-age classes so that we have the ability to meet each student where they are and give them the right level of challenge so that they really develop a love of learning. It was founded to be an inclusive educational space for my daughter who had cerebral palsy. And we have grown into so much more than that and supporting a wide range of learning profiles with universal design in our classrooms, with project-based learning, with differentiated small group experiences to really be able to support a wide profile of learners.
Well, and how old is your daughter now?
My daughter passed away in 2016, the daughter that inspired the school. So she would be 15 this summer, but is no longer with us. I have two other children. My middle daughter is now 13. She went through Up Academy from 2nd through 5th grade and was our first 5th grade graduate. And my son has been here since kindergarten. He'll actually be our first kinder through 5th grade graduate this year.
Awesome. I'm sorry I didn't know about your daughter. I apologize for my insensitivity on that, but I appreciate
Thank you.
the idea of a inclusive learning space. And all month in August, there were interviews from the CAS UDL conference that happened in late July about universal design for learning. So if you haven't heard those, go back and listen to those because there was a lot of great stuff about inclusive design for schools and what that could look like. So Brittany, would you talk to us about why you all created the the Rebel Project Literacy Curriculum and what led to the need for that to happen?
Sure, yeah. So, as a project based learning school, we want to provide our students with experiences that are memorable and feel magical and give them a sense of authenticity. So, we know that including literacy in project based learning creates stronger learning as a whole. And we were searching for a literacy curriculum that would align with the projects that we are creating. This was something that was challenging because our projects are built out of our students' wonderings and interests and current events that are happening within their community. So, as a result of searching and not being able to find something that would integrate with our unique projects, we decided to create something of our own. So, our Rebel Project Literacy Curriculum is a modular curriculum that can be aligned with different projects. There are 3 modules for each year, and they're mixed age, so you can switch them out between grades. And this curriculum allows for content literacy and elements of science of reading to really promote all of the areas of literacy that we're looking to grow and develop.
So, can you help me understand how it integrates with a project based approach rather than like a traditional sage on the stage kind of approach?
Absolutely, yeah. So each module is somewhat focused on a particular genre of writing. So, for example, there might be a module that is focused on persuasive writing. You might choose to align this persuasive writing unit with a project on change makers. That's one of the projects that we've done in the past. So, as you're teaching the specific literacy skills that students are learning, you're using content based on the project. So you're pulling different articles and books around this project to support the engagement in literacy. So you're teaching those literacy skills in the context of engaging and authentic text, which makes it more meaningful for the students.
So, Tanya, from your perspective, what does that unlock for kids to have access to this kind of a curriculum and teachers to have access to this kind of a curriculum?
Yeah, thanks. That's what I was going to say. It unlocks so much for students and teachers. From a student perspective, they really get excited to come to school. We don't really see the resistance in reading and writing because it's aligned and relevant to the projects and the things that they're interested in and the deeper learning that they're doing in other parts of their day. So they're not just reading about, you know, Jane seeing a dog in the morning and then learning about intricate transportation systems within the city that we live in the afternoon. They might be learning about and reading about how trains work and then going and riding a train or learning about the train routes in the afternoon. Like we did a transportation unit last year, so that's what came to mind. But it really integrates the literacy into their interests, into their other areas of learning. And from an educator perspective, it means that they can develop projects that are relevant to students, that they care about, that are relevant to things that are happening in the world around us. And it gives them the freedom to do that and to switch around the modules throughout the year so they're not teaching necessarily the same way and the same stuff every year. But we're getting to the same goals. They're still learning persuasive writing, but they might be learning it through different types of units or different types of projects and things that the students are interested in. So the students are super excited to come to school. The educators get to create really unique and exciting experiences for their students. And really, it just adds an element of joy and fun to all of the learning, which we really believe is the core of elementary, right? We want to provide a broad base of knowledge so that students know what's out there in the world. But really, we want to create this love of learning. We want them to be excited about school. We want them to be excited about writing. We want them to be excited about learning. And that's what this curriculum helps our educators create, helps our culture create, and helps our students be a part of.
Yeah, and that's something that I have seen in my own experience as a principal, where the curriculums that we adopted did not align themselves well to being project based. That you kind of had to have project based be a separate thing, or you had to have the literacy or the curriculum, whatever it was, be a separate thing that you're like, okay, now we got to cram this thing in. you got to turn away from doing the thing that you're really excited about and now turn to this boring book work. Brittany, as you were creating this, how did you develop that in a way that it felt natural and comfortable? And what does that look like now for teachers?
Yeah. I mean, as you're saying, there's a lot of elements to include in literacy, which is why we're often turning to those like pre-created workbooks and textbooks and curriculums that exist. So there was definitely a lot to think about in developing a curriculum that would integrate with projects and still teach all of the skills and knowledge that students had to learn. So, in order to fit all of that into one literacy block, it's divided into different components. So, we divide the literacy block into the community component, which is first, and that's the whole group lesson where they're learning some kind of new targeted skill for that day, and they're practicing it within the context of a content-based text. And then they're moving on to their agency time. And during this time, they have a specific task that they're working on. And the teacher is also pulling small groups at that time. So while the class is using their agency and working on that larger task, the teacher is able to sit down and focus on more targeted instruction with small groups. We really, though, want it to feel like the lesson is around the main teaching point from the beginning that was taught during community time. So after that agency time, the students take a break because they've been doing a lot of independent work. And that's actually when we bring in, we call it a self check, an SELF check. And that's where we bring in different competencies. Each day, there's a specific competency that students are reflecting on. And this is not related to the academic piece. This is related to their working habits that they use during their agency time. So, for example, it might be a reflection on courage. And they might say, like, the teacher might say, how did you take a risk during your agency time? How did that make you feel? And the students are just taking a minute to stop and reflect on the way that they have shown this value so far, this competency so far, and then what they might change for the next part of their independent work time. At this time, we also encourage the class to take some kind of movement break, just something quick to get their brains ready to work and focus again. After that break, they have what we call empowerment time. And this is where we encourage the students to go to the teacher if they need support, to find the resources and tools that they need to help them be successful and work towards their goal. And then we close the whole lesson out with a wrap up, and that involves some different kind of thinking routine or protocol in each lesson, but it gives the students an opportunity to share what they've worked on, to have another moment of reflection, and just close out and plan for the next day as a class.
Can you give me an example of the community agency self-check, empowerment, and a wrap-up for a specific project that a student would be working on?
I'm thinking of our K1 did a restaurant project when we did the economy, and Brittany just brought up the courage competency. And so thinking through one of the things that they would have done. So in the restaurant project, we partnered with a local restaurant. Our K1s went over and they took a tour and learned about all the different jobs of a restaurant. They went back again and they interviewed with the restaurant staff for the jobs that they wanted to do and the things that they thought looked interesting within restaurant positions. So if they wanted to be a host, or if they wanted to be a chef, or if they wanted to be a server, the things that they wanted to do. And then the restaurant actually shut down one afternoon for our community come in for our K1 class to run their restaurant. So they developed menus. They had to do the math of all the money of what people ordered. They cooked, I put cooked in quotes, like they had cold sandwiches and pre-made brownies and things. We weren't actually fully in the kitchen with flame broiled, but they had their menu and the chefs created the food and people ordered and the servers took it out. But looking at, the things that they needed to work with, they're learning about collaboration. And so throughout the literacy, as they're reading about parts of a restaurant or somebody who struggled in a situation because there was a conflict, something went wrong. So they're learning about that collaboration and the courage, right? We've got, I think this is totally side note, but one of my favorite memories from that project is a little first grader running through the restaurant going, "We need food for table 4." Like, she's 6. And it was adorable. But the courage to walk up to a table and say, "What can I get you to eat?" And to be able to write that down and then go get their food and bring it back. And so then having them sit down and do a self-reflection on the things that I learned. How was I a good collaborator? Like, how did we all work in a team? Like, that sort of setting doesn't work unless the host is seating people and the servers taking their order and the chefs are putting the food together, right? It's a whole system of collaboration. So they can look back on, how was I a good collaborator? How did I show courage? How did I work well with others? And I'll turn it over and let Brittany jump in, as I was giving her some space to free her brain and think of other things that might actually be in the curriculum more directly. But seeing it from the outside and watching it in action, it's amazing to see how they develop the competencies, how they develop the skills, how they develop the ability to reflect. Like, that's something that's really hard for a lot of us as adults, to look back and say, what went well, what worked, what didn't work, how could I have handled that situation differently, how could I have made things better. And when we start teaching that at a really young age, they build this really amazing sense of confidence and self-awareness.
So before you jump in, Brittany, I want to say that one of the things that's so powerful about project-based learning specifically is that it teaches so much more than the content that we're trying to teach. And people who have listened to my podcast know that I've been on this horse for ages. So they've heard me say all this before, but I just want to reiterate that when it comes to a literacy focus and a literacy curriculum, there are one of my favorite ideas is this idea that if you are interested in something, you're going to want to learn how to read more effectively so you can learn more about that thing. And my favorite example of this is a student who is in elementary school who really loves any kind of sport. And then they start devouring books that are about that sport. And that is a very clear, easy example that most people can see really quickly. You talk to a kid about a sport they love, and then they will just go devour anything and learn how to read so they can read those things. And this is what's great about this project-based learning approach and integrating it with the curriculum is that when a kid wants to know how to make food in your restaurant example, then they start being interested in that. And that story you share of the kid saying, I forgot what they said already, but we need whatever at table 5, like that is so powerful. And there are so many instances where kids learn adult skills that adults struggle with, but they experience them and learn them at a young age. What would you add there, Brittany?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that as I was working on this curriculum, I continued to think, wow, if adults use these skills every day, like our world would be a better place. And it's really powerful and really cool to be able to get to integrate these skills into a K-5 curriculum. And I can talk a little bit more about the specifics of the outline of a lesson. I think it's interesting to think about how a unit begins because it's before the kids are really engaged in a topic yet. So if they're learning all about restaurants, they haven't gotten too deep into the restaurant topic at the beginning, but we still really want to hook all of our students. So thinking about how we would hook and design a lesson for a K1 mixed class, I'm thinking specifically about a unit that they did on that persuasive writing. And so in the beginning of the module, we really just want them to learn how to express their opinion. And so the lesson would start with the community aspect, and the teacher might show them an example of a new school shirt or something that feels relevant and authentic. So she might say, like, this is our new school shirt for the school year. What do you think about it? And she would, or they would, encourage the students to talk about their opinions on that shirt. After they've all shared their opinion, she would go back and talk about that word opinion and talk about what it means and how they all had different ideas about the shirt and they were able to express their opinion and just introduce that vocabulary. And moving on during the students' agency time, they would work on an assignment of what is the best shirt for our school. And in this way, they're doing a drawing of a school shirt. So they're using their creativity and they're also, depending on their level, either doing just the drawing with labels, or they might be encouraged to do some writing about the t-shirt and what makes it the best for their school. Their SEL check for that day might be, how did it feel to show creativity today? So getting them to think about what it felt like for them, because creativity feels different for different people, and it also feels different on different days. So it could be something that was specifically going on that day that helped you to feel more or less creative. During their empowerment, they're continuing to work on that t-shirt design, possibly working on some interesting may-do options if they finish. And then at the end, wrapping it up with a class discussion. And the class discussion would be focused on the prompt, is it good or bad to have different opinions? And this is just for our youngest learners. So they're just beginning their exploration on opinion writing and what it means to have an opinion. And throughout this unit, they're going to go into sharing your opinion in a respectful way, and all of these really important life skills.
Which you mentioned are things that if adults understood that and used that, the world would be a better place. That's for sure. So, yeah, very good. So let's talk a little bit about the science of reading and how that incorporates into this and what that looks like. Do you have a preference on who takes that one first?
All you, Brittany.
Sure.
She was just
All
hand
right.
it to you, Tanya. That's the best part. She was like, all you, Tanya, but you beat her.
Yeah. So the curriculum uses the science of reading to be able to produce skilled readers by the time students are leaving elementary school. So when we're thinking about the science of reading, there's different components that are interwoven throughout the curriculum. So things like, the one that really sticks out to me is the background knowledge piece. So there's been a lot of new research about content literacy and how it's really important to build students' background knowledge. And I think the interesting part about this curriculum is that there's no limit to the background knowledge that we can teach students through projects. And because it's based on students' wonderings and interests or current events, things going on in the world that we feel are necessary to teach to students, they're learning so much different knowledge through all of the reading that they're doing. They're learning vocabulary within the context of new content. They are about different print concepts and literacy knowledge. I will say that the bulk of this curriculum focuses on the language comprehension piece. There is word recognition interwoven. However, that's the purpose of having the small groups, is to really focus on an explicit phonics curriculum. We know that the explicit teaching of phonics is really important, especially in early elementary. So that's why we provided the time for teachers to bring in that explicit systematic curriculum that just ties in with the other skills that kids are learning in the content literacy piece. The structure of the curriculum, as I explained with the different components, it enables a teacher to combine the skills that they're teaching within the context of the project literacy, and then also the skills that kids need to learn in a systematic way.
Yeah, very good. Anything you'd add, Tanya?
No, what she said.
Okay, that rocks. All right, my last question is focused, because this is National Literacy Month, is focused on literacy. So what is one thing that a principal can do this week to improve literacy in their school? One simple action that they can do to improve literacy in their school. Tanya, we'll start with you, and then Brittany can have the final word.
One of the really early things that we did, and one of the things that we believe in as a school, and actually one of the things that this curriculum helps develop, is creating time in the school day for learning and for developing the skills that we think are really important. So this curriculum, as you touched on briefly, Jethro, like integrates the project-based learning into literacy. You still need extra project-based blocks, but it's not like you're trying to cram it all in, because it allows and creates more space and time in the day to bring project into different areas of the day, as well as giving it its own time. A thing to do to increase literacy, one of the things we did early on, was just creating space and time for our students to read. When we first opened our school, we had 30 minutes every day. That was after lunch. It was our reflection time. It was our quiet time. It was spent in the library. And it was a time for students to just pick out whatever book that they wanted to and sit and read silently. Like, we know from research that just 30 minutes a day of independent reading greatly increases students' literacy and reading ability. So as much as we can give them that space in school to read things that are interesting, that they're excited about, because the point is just to get them reading.
Very good. Brittany, what would you say a principal can do this week to increase literacy at their school?
Yeah, absolutely. Just increasing the reading time. But I think to add on to that, principal talking with students about the books that they're reading. So just including more conversations about the kinds of books and what's getting them excited about those books, and maybe what's inspiring them or what they feel like they want to read next or do next after reading a specific book.
Yeah, very good. Both of those are great suggestions. I love the idea of talking to kids about what they're reading because it's so easy to do. And the great thing about that is that when you ask them what they're interested in, they feel like you care, they feel like you love them, they feel like you're paying attention. And then you get this information about them that helps you build a better relationship later, which is powerful, and then helps you find things that you're like, oh, hey, I remember you said that you like this one thing. Here's this one thing. And it's a great way to develop and deepen that relationship as well. All right. Where do people access and get the Rebel Project Literacy Curriculum? How do they find it? And how do they connect with you two more?
So you can connect with us through the Up Academy website, which is upacademysf.com. I am very active on LinkedIn. You can find me, Tanya Sheckley, on LinkedIn. We also have the Rebel Literacy Project Curriculum is connected to projectup.us. We have a partnership with Inkwire, and so soon the entire curriculum will be available and accessible through inkwire.ca.
Cool. And Brittany, are you on LinkedIn also? Do you want people to connect with you there?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Brittany Botta, or on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Projects and Pom Poms.
Projects and Pom Poms? That's great.
I do have pom poms in my office currently.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. I didn't see that coming, so you kind of took me back there. But now there it is. Projects and Pom Poms. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you both for coming on Transformative Principal. This has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate your time and the cool things that you are creating at Up Academy.
Thanks so much, Jethro.
This episode was edited by Gage Sanderson.